Hi everyone, Dr. Joel Glenn Wixon here, and this is another 7 Billion Geniuses video, and it's a part 2 to the video that I did last time where I was talking about healing. And it's a part 2 because what I really want to do now is kind of move past these sort of standard accepted notions of healing, which I think are connected to ways of thinking that end up kind of getting in our way, because it at least for me, connects me to this notion of going back to the way things were, becoming someone who I was, as opposed to the possibility, and something I've experienced with lots of people who I've come to know, is this possibility of becoming kind of something new, more than what we were. I don't know, that kind of puts us on a continuum of progression that I think is also problematic, but simply consistent with sort of our own understanding as we regenerate as a being. Scientifically, we're all kind of familiar with that. That I guess it's every 7 years we're completely different in the context of the actual cells that are a part of our body, and so the notion that that healing would be to create skin that was the way that it was before is completely inconsistent, even with sort of what you might consider to be hard science. So thinking about this notion of health, joy, and experiences being in the moment that we're actually in. This notion of healing, in moving away from that notion of healing into one of the idea of this practice being more about just allowing ourselves to become what we are to be now through whatever struggles we happen to be struggling with, and thinking about the choices that we make in these moments in consistent with that, in being consistent with that. In other words, is this food that I'm about to eat going to be consistent with me moving forward in the direction that I want to move forward in, and is this way that I'm going to respond, or the anger or feelings that I'm carrying, is that consistent with how I want to be in the context of how I'm going to move forward? So how I'm actually sitting in this moment that I'm in. And so one of the practices I've been taking up recently in the context of this is when I find myself in a place where I'm either tired or thinking about making a choice, and to kind of relax as much as I possibly can into the space that I'm actually in, and it's, you know, it's consistent with these mindfulness practices where I'm in the moment that I'm in, but really kind of doing that with the intention of the energy that I'm expending in the context of anger or frustration or those sorts of things is really it does me no service. It's literally taking energy away from me, and I actually saw some really cool brain scans yesterday at a conference that I was at that showed that in fact the areas of our brain, this isn't huge for me, but it is kind of interesting to see that the actual the brain centers that get activated when we're thinking about things like fear or looking at, I mean, literally the vision centers get activated when we're thinking about what we might be seeing in the future. So just to give you a sense of literally how much energy we actually are using in these thoughts that we get caught up in. And so another, in the context of what I was just talking about, the idea of, you know, are these thoughts that I'm having right now, are they consistent with kind of the space that I want to be in terms of what I am becoming in the direction that I want to be moving in. And so this notion of the direction that I want to be moving in, one where I'm accepting what's going on for me right now and curious about what might happen next. In the context of pain sorts of experiences, it is to experience the actual pain that you're in as what it is, as opposed to what it might be or what it was, and not to diminish those experiences, but simply to really hold up the one that we're actually experiencing in the moment that we're in. I believe that culturally we're invited into this position of oftentimes prioritizing the future and past experiences, the idea of what we've been through and what we might yet go through. Generally, we think about these things in terms that are not positive as well. So there's the prioritization and also the bias that the things that are about to come are horrible, and that we somehow need to hang on to the things that we've been through that were also not great for some reason that I believe is intended to support a kind of a learning and process, the idea of not replicating them. But unfortunately, the thoughts that we're generally hanging on to are about experiences that we weren't in control of in the first place, So for us to hang on to these experiences that we weren't in control of in an effort to not replicate them suggests that we will be able to not replicate things that we didn't do in the first place. So not a useful paradigm. And you know, I think about this in the context of ourselves biologically, and even in the notions of evolution. You know, tracking what has happened to us as a way to learn is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And I think, you know, that in some ways parts of how we are set up biologically get in our way because they encourage us to track things that remind sort of our, I don't know, our original brain about how we used to be when we were literally tracking things. But they're actually not things that we're tracking. They're thoughts, experiences, emotions, distractions, desires, all kinds of things that kind of take this place, but ultimately don't serve us. It was another thing that came up in the conference yesterday about how after 6 seconds of not having something to do, although it was unclear exactly what that thing to do might be, we go into these places where our mind is kind of caught up in future and past, and you know, it wasn't articulated, and I don't even know if it was understood by the person that was speaking. But I think about how, you know, as a species, we're kind of literally living moment to moment, day to day, in ways that are inconsistent with kind of how these bodies that we've been given are supposed to function. And in a body that's more active, generally has less of these sort of gaps of thinking. If you're walking or running or dancing or maybe even playing music, there are things that are going on in those moments, moment to moment, as things change, that occupy our thoughts in ways that I believe can be useful. And I'll tell you, as a singer-songwriter, there are even times when I'm playing along and instead of thinking about the note that I'm in, I'm thinking about the next note that I'm going to play, or whether or not I'm going to forget the next word. And that kind of thinking is something that I'm working to move past, because I believe it's consistent with the problematic sort of thinking that I've been talking about. These problematic invitations to be in certain ways in relation to our thoughts, as opposed to alternative invitations that we might create to be more specifically free to be in the moments that we're in. So just to summarize the thoughts for this one is to move away from this notion of healing, which for me brings me back to the idea that that I would return to. It returns me to the idea that I would return to a way of being, or a state of being that existed before, and distracts me from the possibility of actually evolving into something that is more about what is to be. And that in that context, that I'm going to do my best to conserve energy that I would otherwise be spending on future or past imagination, destructive thoughts that literally take up energy and that don't serve me in the context of moving forward in a direction that's more consistent with how I want to be. And so thinking about the foods that I might eat, the thoughts that I'm having, the actions that I'm taking, the specific things that I'm paying attention to, and exactly how I'm living my life in the context of being in a place that's more consistent just in this moment, how I am experiencing my life and the choices that I'm making to be experiencing things in certain ways based on, again, I guess, you know, the food thing, what we're drinking, what we're eating. These are choices that we can actively make that either serve or don't serve our intentions, and to be paying closer attention to those is a thing that I can actively do. And so in the spirit of that, I'm going to share a song with all you. It's called Intersections, and it's going to be on my new CD that's dedicated to my street performance and the knowledge and experiences that I've had there, and incorporates also these ideas that I've been talking about here in 7 Billion Geniuses. And so one of the things that you'll hear in this song is the idea that our essence transpires in the context of each other in moments, and that what we see in those moments is really a version of ourselves, in that we are reflected through our expectations and our ideas about the world in those experiences as people pass by, and to have some generosity with ourselves and some willingness to allow ourselves compassion with ourselves, allowing ourselves to have that experience of shared but to open ourselves up to our own reflection, the reflections of ourselves in those interactions, and perhaps, have another kind of sense of who we are, that we would hold, gently, as it can pass, but just to consider that as another way to kind of encounter ourselves. And there's the chorus is about the notion that every one of these interactions is ultimately makes us more than we were before, and in lots of different ways, depending on what the interaction is, and that our journeys converge and unfold over time, and that's something that we can really honor and be, and certainly something that I love to honor and be happy about. And it doesn't have to be street performing, and just be standing in the street, and also have these experiences. So I'm going to turn the reverb back on, and so this is Intersections. What I do requires that your essence transpires in a moment. The person I see is a version of me that I know. But you cannot show as you're here, then you go in a moment. The fullness of you that I know can't come through as you go. Somehow I see intersections of you making me more than I used to be, yeah, 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 yeah. Wait here a while as you pass and you smile in a moment. Maybe you'll stay as I sing and I play, I don't know. But what will emerge as our paths all unconverge in this moment cannot be foretold as our paths all unfold as we go. That's when I see intersections of you making me more than I used to be, yeah, yeah, yeah. What I do requires that your presence transpires in a moment, yeah. The person I see is a version of me that I know. But you cannot show as you're here, then you go in a moment, yeah, yeah. The fullness of you that I know can't come through as you go. That's when I see intersections of you making me more than I used to be. That's when I see intersections of you making me more than I used to be, yeah, 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 yeah. Intersections. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and you might even hear me sing that song in the street sometime when if you're downtown Portsmouth or wherever the heck I might be. I kind of do the street performance all over the place, so hope to see you sometime. If you want to make comments, please do so at the end of the video. I have all my contact information there. I'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts, hear your ideas, hear your experiences. Any thoughts or ideas you have, my contact information is there, so please do stay in touch. Please subscribe, and I appreciate all the time you take to watch these videos. It really means a lot to me. And that's it for today. Please do stay in touch.